Welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I'm host Peter Taaffe.
I'm co-host Kyle Herbert.
And I'm full-time trial lawyer. You notice that Kyle did not say that, Bill Ogden.
And we have two special guests with us. Peter, why don't you introduce who we've got with us today?
All right, well, we have a returning guest, Amanda Orr, who is part of the Dirty Verdict team, along with Josh Bellin. And but our new special guest is Justice on the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, Michelle Slaughter. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And
Hey, pull up your microphone. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Amanda's a pro.
You have to speak into the microphone.
Yep.
Okay, so I always have to lead in with this, and it's like every Texas Tribune story or Texas Assembly story is like, okay, we got to line out, we got to explain to people how the court system in Texas works. Mm-hmm. We have the first of all, the United States Supreme Court. Then we have a state Supreme Court that covers civil cases. And then we have the Court of Criminal Appeals, which is the highest court in the state of Texas for criminal cases.
Right, you're the criminal Supreme Court. We're sister courts to the Texas Supreme Court.
But the intermediate appellate courts all have concurrent jurisdiction over civil and criminal cases.
Right, absolutely. They handle everything.
And then so for civil cases, we know they can file if they don't like one of the parties doesn't like how it worked. At the appellate court, they can file a petition to the Supreme Court if it's on the civil side. What is a criminal, either defendant or a prosecuting office, if they don't like the outcome of the appellate court, what it's called they file to y'all?
A petition for discretionary review. Yes. Okay. So it's a PDR in either high court.
Okay.
So we have discretion to hear it or not.
If the Criminal Court of Appeals, I have a lot of dumb questions. If the Criminal Court of Appeals decides to not take a case, does that give that the authority as like the Texas Supreme Court when they decline? It gives it authority at times of a Supreme Court holding. Does that work the same way on the Criminal Court of Appeals?
So if it involves you're talking about going to federal court after there's
on the civil side, we can petition the Supreme Court and they can deny, refuse, right. And so I didn't know if it worked the same way on the criminal side.
It does.
Okay.
Yes. Since it's discretionary review on either court, we can decide whether to grant it, and we can actually grant on our own motion as well. If we see something that wasn't raised as an issue, but we want to address it, we can grant on our own motion. But yeah, it's the same as Texas Supreme Court.
This follow-up question is there a right to an appeal for a criminal defendant to the Criminal Court of Appeals? Because I know at the federal level, I think you get the one freebie. Does that go all the way up on the state side?
So it yes and no. So there is a absolute right to appeal, and then for discretionary review, they don't have a right to counsel, if you will. They can still file it on their own, or they can hire an attorney if they want, but they're not entitled to court-appointed counsel for a petition for discretionary review. Now, one can be appointed by a trial judge if they want, or by the Court of Appeals even if they wanted, but it's just not it's not a right to an attorney for the discretionary review aspect.
Now that we got some of my dumb questions out of the way, where are you from?
I was going to say, we jumped right in, and my point,
I just learned more about criminal law in the last 2 minutes than I've forgotten in the preceding.
My questions sound well thought, right? They were off the cuff.
No, this is a kind of a landmark in our, the name of the podcast, Dirty Verdict. Some people are like, what was it? What is that all about? It's just a catchy name that Kyle and I came up with after a lot of debating and focus grouping that there's nothing dirty about it. But Justice Slaughter is first statewide office holder we've ever had of the court of the highest land. So we really appreciate you.
First justice we've ever had.
Yeah. Earlier, he said he wouldn't call me Judge Kyle because I was on the State Bar Ethics Committee for a while and sat in on some, disbarments. And I said, I don't want to be Judge Kyle. I want to be Justice Herbert.
And I said, you got to earn that title.
Herbert.
Herbert, he has French.
Either way.
One more thing about the law that a lot of people don't realize that under the Texas Constitution, on the Court of Criminal Appeals, we're still called judges, while the intermediate courts of appeals, the Texas Supreme Court, are called justices. So it's a Texas constitutional deal. So we are called judges.
I smell an amendment.
So Bill, you live so much I don't know.
Well, you're handling oral argument in front of the Court of Appeals for Kyle. he needs to refer to you as Judge Slaughter when you ask him a very piercing question.
There you go.
Do you guys get robes?
Yes, we get robes.
So long as there's robes.
And we sit all 9 of us en banc for every decision.
Like a real court?
Wait, so every court, every decision is an en banc, everybody participates?
9 of us.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much I didn't know about the criminal world.
I got a lot of questions, but we should dig into how you got to the Criminal Court of Appeals first. Pete, take it away.
Long history, which I'm aware of. So you start on the legal side. Where'd you go to law school?
University of Houston Law Center.
Good. That's here. I'll give you that because they were giving 5s to each other.
And hold on. And U of H undergrad.
Yeah.
Big undergrad, very.
See, I looked at the resume.
Yes.
Full. And then you went after U of H Law. You went and worked for a big firm.
I did. I started off at Haynes and Boone doing labor and employment law, and got recruited over to Lock Lord and was at Lock Lord for several years doing labor and employment, and then some complex commercial litigation, and even some bankruptcy because our senior associate went in-house with ExxonMobil, and the partner said, hey, you know something about bankruptcy? Because I used to participate in the bankruptcy moot court competition and then coach the UH teams after that, after I graduated.
The second best mock trial program in Houston.
Come on.
Judging just by number of trophies, I was going to say it.
Do y'all have a bankruptcy mock trial? I mean, that's
No, we do not have a bankruptcy mock trial. We probably maybe a moot court. I'm not smart enough for moot court. I'm just simpleton trial lawyer.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, so anyway, I did some bankruptcy work too. So I did a variety of civil litigation.
And then at some point you opened your own practice. Were you in Clear Lake?
I was in Clear Lake. I opened my own practice because I knew I wanted to run for judge, and I knew that being at a large law firm in downtown Houston was not going to give me the time that I needed to run. And so I went to the partners there and explained what I wanted to do, and they were very supportive. They even were supportive when some clients wanted to go with me. And so I have nothing but high praise and appreciation for Lock Lord for how they treated me through that process, and they were wonderful.
Was it Lock Lord at the time? Or was it?
When I left, it was Lock the Dollar Sapp when I first joined.
Yeah.
What drew you towards Galveston?
So my husband works at NASA, and so we wound up settling in the Galveston County area when I was in law school and then beyond. We like the area. We love it down there. Great community and great place to raise a family. So
Where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up in Fort Worth in Houston. Right after 8th grade, we moved to Houston. So I was in Houston for high school. And
Which high school?
so I started off at the Auditor National School for most of high school. My dad was the athletic director there.
Wow.
And then I had gone to private school my entire life because he had always taught at private school, and I always went where he taught. And so for the last year and a half of high school, I pulled the, only child, spoiled brat, teenager routine and said, I want to go to public school. My dad said, over my dead body. And so, because I was about to graduate in a class of 25 kids, and I wanted a different experience. And of course, teenagers always know what's best for them, right? So I said that to my dad, and he was like, no, over my dead body. And I said, fine, I'll stay in private school, and I just, won't do my homework, and I'll fail my tests. And he knew I was stubborn enough that I might actually do it. And so he said, okay, fine, you can go to public school. So I actually graduated from Northbrook High School in the Spring Branch School District.
Oh.
So Kyle, that's what you have to look forward to with 2 strong-willed daughters.
So I have a daughter who has been a teenager for 5 days.
Oh, goodness.
And we're loving it. She's just fantastic.
I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. So
Wow.
I'm living your...
My 13-year-old girl, actually, I don't really have much bad or sarcastic to say about her. She might be the nicest person I've ever known. Shout out there to you, she's begging, by the way, to listen to the podcast.
You won't let her listen?
No,
It says a lot about your podcast skills.
it does. But it says bad things about my podcast ability, but good things maybe about my parenting.
Yeah, that's fair.
But she will make me this trade. If I buy her a hat and a jacket, she will come on the podcast, and she thinks that the podcast needs a kids episode.
I love it.
But I have to buy. She said she has to be allowed to dress like a lawyer, which in her mind includes a sport coat, which is fine, but also a hat. And I'm not sure. Look, I don't know. I think she's probably thinking like a bowler hat. but
Like a top hat.
yeah,
I mean, look at Lincoln.
Like you were at a court.
He was Lincoln was a great lawyer.
Out the door.
I think in her mind, I spend every day with people dressed like the Monopoly guy. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna let her pick out a hat, whatever she wants.
Yeah, I'll bring a monocle for her.
Yes.
Okay, so we diverted. So you go back, open up a practice in Clear Lake,
Yes.
Galveston County,
Yes.
and you begin kind of the process to run for judge.
Yes.
And what year was that?
So I left court in summer of 2010, and then established my law firm. And actually, it took off quickly. I was incredibly blessed, and wound up having to bring in other attorneys and paralegals, and just to cover the work. I started, laying the groundwork to, be more active and involved politically and in my community, and so it was a tremendous experience. And then I ran against a 12-year incumbent, and there were 4 of us in the race for the primary for that position, which was the 405th District Court in Galveston.
405th.
Yes. And so I almost won outright. I was 60 votes short of winning it outright without having to go to a runoff, but then I went into a runoff with the incumbent and ultimately prevailed.
And that's probably where we first met, I would guess, around that time.
Yes, so that was 2012 when I was elected, and so January 1st, 2013 is when I was sworn in as judge of the 405th District Court.
And when was this the switch in Galveston from Democrat to Republican happen? Like,
I guess
what year was it? Was that
2010.
Yeah, okay. That's when
Rita.
no, it was 1 year. It was a 60-40.
Oh,
Democrat.
I didn't know that. I always thought there was like some sort of mass casualty event that kind of triggered it, but I didn't know that.
I think was it Hurricane Ike? I think it was
Ike, that was the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
I think it was Hurricane Ike, and that made a difference in the community politically.
Yeah.
Well, the 405th is still in good hands with Judge Jared Robinson, but it's not the same.
Well,
So
yes.
I like Judge Robinson.
Jared's great, and I'm glad to know. I was especially happy that he kept my coordinator, who I just adore. So Dana's amazing, and she's keeping him in line, I think.
Oh, very much so. Nobody asks him for permission. We just look at her. Is that okay?
Do you still live in Galveston? And I'm assuming the court meets in Austin.
The court meets in Austin. I still live in Lake City, and then I go to Austin about once a week. So Tuesdays we meet as a court, all of us, to discuss cases, but we pre-vote a lot. So we have the court is original jurisdiction for post-conviction writs, which number in the thousands every year, and so we pre-vote the writs, we pre-vote the petitions for discretionary review. And then any judge can mark anything for discussion, and it gets brought into the conference, and all opinions have to be discussed in conference. And so we meet once a week in Austin, and then we have oral arguments on Wednesdays, depending on the need, so about every 6-8 weeks or so. And then, so I'll be there for that as well.
When you're voting on the writs, is it a rule of 4 like the Supreme Court as far as accepting a case or not accepting a case?
Yes. It's a rule of 4 on PDRs. Writs is majority vote, but like PDRs, if 4 of us vote to grant, then it gets granted. And it only takes 3 to grant oral argument.
Did you go straight from the Galveston County bench to the Court of Criminal Appeals?
I did, yes.
So you have this long background in civil trial, civil work, bankruptcy work.
Yes.
And then you get on a bench in Galveston, and did you fall in love with all the criminals in Galveston? And you decided, this is that's a big difference.
It's more interesting.
It is. It was tremendous because I did not have the traditional background for a criminal law judge, but it was a general jurisdiction bench. And really, honestly, that was, I felt the need that was lacking, especially in Galveston County and some of the benches, because a lot of the judges had come from prosecutorial backgrounds and then became judges. They had no civil experience. And that's why I felt like there was a special, a real need was someone who had some civil law experience. And so, but when I got on the bench, it was amazing because I absolutely loved the felony criminal work. I still enjoyed the civil. I've always enjoyed the civil, but the felony criminal work that I was involved in, it was just fascinating and interesting, and I just loved it. I felt called to it, and it really.
Can you give me an example?
Of what?
So, I worked, turned at the DA's office when I was in law school.
Oh, please don't.
And it was brutal. Like, it made me sad. I didn't want to go to work. But you love these felonies. Like, what about it? We like, this is just, I'm going to dig into this case. What was it in particular, if you can explain it to the audience?
Sure. Well, so I'm definitely a law and order type of person, and I'm law and order judge. And, but I do believe that in certain situations there's rooms for rehabilitation, even for felons. And, but what I was especially concerned about was there was a history in that court of felons getting on probation, here they are, they pled guilty to a felony. They might be on deferred adjudication or probation. They've either pled guilty to a felony or been convicted of the felony, getting probation, violating probation, getting a slap on the wrist, and then being, sent back out in the community, having another violation, coming back, another slap on the wrist, going back into the community, and committing more violations and sometimes more crimes. And, I couldn't stand for that. And so one thing that I did, and one thing I really enjoyed and felt like I had a tremendous impact in, is when I would have some of these felons on deferred adjudication or probation. I mean, I would lay it out for them. Look, you are receiving a gift here. You have pled guilty to this felony. You're getting a deferred adjudication. And I want you to know that you need to abide by the terms and conditions of your probation, or it's not going to go well for you with me. And because I don't appreciate people insulting the gift that you're being given.
And that felon's name was not Bill Ogden.
Not yet. Not yet.
But and it was, and it seemed like it clicked with a lot of them. And so I had a really good track record with my probationers or those who were on community supervision. And they also learned pretty quickly if they were on community supervision and, they violated it. I would, a lot of times I would consider all the facts, but I would bring the humor down, and they knew it. And they knew what to expect. The probation officers knew what I would do. And so the probation officers can tell them, hey, if you keep screwing up like this, we're going to have to take you in front of Judge Slaughter, and it's not going to be good. So,
it's a fool me once type deal.
One strike.
Was there a particular type of crime that was unique or that you saw a lot in Galveston?
Drugs.
Lots of drugs?
Lots of drugs. Drugs was a huge thing. DWIs, felony DWIs, another huge thing. So you would see a lot of that. What shocked me the most and was horrifically tragic and sad was the crimes against children. Having practiced in the civil world, I didn't realize how extensive
It's a lot.
it was. And then, on the Court of Criminal Appeals, it's like we see so many cases from around the state of crimes against children, and it's just awful and heartbreaking and disgusting. And so that was something that was always just, it still shocks me, to this day.
What was the appeal of transitioning to the Criminal Court of Appeals?
Well, I'd always enjoyed appellate work. I did some appellate work as a civil attorney. I always enjoyed it. I'm kind of a law nerd a little bit, and I enjoy the reading, researching, writing, editing aspect. And so when there was an opening on the Court of Criminal Appeals and having had that experience with the felony criminal world and just really enjoying that practice, I decided to run for the position. And there was also one aspect. I remember there was one particular case where I was very strongly in disagreement with how the Court of Criminal Appeals resolved the issue. I didn't think that they were following the strict language of the statute because I'm what I refer to myself as a constitutional conservative and originalist. I'm very much letter of the law and as originally intended. And so when I felt like there were some problems on the court where they weren't doing that, then that was also a motivation to run.
So difference between originalist and like a textualist is you go and look at the intent that they had when they passed certain amendments.
So if there's a question about it, sometimes there's a question about, okay, what did this really mean? And so, if it's clear by the strict language, you don't go beyond that.
Right.
But if there's a question as to what it really meant, when it was enacted or as ratified, if it was a constitutional provision, then yes, I look at, okay, what did this mean at the time when it was enacted?
Okay.
Like, did ye old Kalachi Shopapee, like the SHOPP, did that mean shop, or was it something totally different.
I don't know, but they have the best venison little kolaches.
They're right down the street.
I know.
If next time we're gonna go to Kolache Shop.
Kyle
Fans.
Kyle will be in Austin on Wednesday with kolaches for all 9 of you discussing
With a variety from the Shopapee.
the Shapapi.
Travel on the way, my commute to Austin, there's Fresco's, and they have such cool.
Oh yeah, that's the real deal. That's
Oh, I like it. 36, yes.
Good. Weigel's in Woodrange.
are they all Czech or are they Czech and German? I actually don't know.
For a long time, they were the same.
I don't want to start a battle here.
They were Czech.
I know a lot are Czech.
Did you
I know Prasik is Czech.
Did you have a question, Amanda?
Yeah, wasn't there an election where you set a record? You were like, you got the most votes in Texas?
Yes. Well, in the nation, actually. So in 2018, for the general election, I had over 4.7 million votes, and which was more votes than any other contested Republican candidate in the nation.
And the nation.
I had, more votes than the governor, more votes than Senator Ted Cruz, and yes, and when you look compared to the nation, compared to the other candidates of the nation, I had more votes than any other Republican contested candidate.
I'm a big political nerd, and I don't know how big of a draw this is going to make for the podcast, but like, what was your approach to a statewide race when you never done one? Like, who do you surround yourself with? Do they have people that approach you? Like, how's that work?
So one of my very dear friends is Justice John Devine on the Texas Supreme Court, and he ran an incredible, just grassroots ground campaign when he ran for the Supreme Court and prevailed and beat an incumbent. And so I had, reached out to him and just asked him for advice. And so he gave me a lot of advice and gave me a lot of good pointers on where to go and who to meet with and who to talk to. And so I did that. I did a lot. I just went all over the state and went to as many things I could go to, met as many people and talked to as many people as I could. It was an open seat, so I wasn't running against an incumbent, which, that's always certainly helpful. And because no one really knew any of us, and I could distinguish myself from my, other two opponents. And so I was able to do that and just try to get as many endorsements as I could get to get my name out there.
So are you just like in a Winnebago going through West Texas? Like, I'm curious. It's a real question.
So, and by the way, he's pumping you for information. Bill
I am not. I got way too many.
has ambitions to be on the sanitation committee of his HOA. He's been trying to take over that thing for a long time.
There are better odds of my case being before the Criminal Court of Appeals than me running for the Criminal Court of Appeals. So,
well, it was a definite challenge. It was certainly different than running a county-wide race. And of course, I was still a district judge, and I take my job very seriously, and I wasn't going to abandon my job while I was campaigning. And so, and then I had kids. I had kids, and they were younger at that time. And so my goal was to do as much as I could, but still do my job in the court and still be a mom. And so my day would start out with getting up early, getting my kids ready for school, dropping them off at school, driving down to Galveston, which is about a 30-minute drive from my house, running my court, working through lunch, and then leaving early, like around, 3 or 4, driving to San Antonio or Dallas or East Texas or someplace else, going to an event, an evening event, staying there to try to hit as many, and not hit literally, but talk to as many people as I could possibly talk to while I was there, and then drive home to be home in my own bed that night and be able to take my kids to the next day. So I get home about 2 a.m. The Buc-ee's employees got to know me really well. Different Buc-ee's.
So you were kind of grassrooting, you were Betoing it before he ran. He was big on his grassroots. I went to every county, but you were doing that kind of, this is before his run for Senate, huh?
Well, I won't compare myself to Beto, but
from a grassroots perspective. Because there's not a lot of statewide races that do that for the most part. Well, that we see, at least here in Houston. No. They just, I guess they hit the political epicenter of Houston and it spreads itself.
So what you have to do, of course, we run in a partisan election. And so you run as a Republican or a Democrat. And so you have to get through the primary, and the general election is driven by the top of the ticket. There's really not much you can do as a candidate, unless you're, way high up on the ballot. I mean, we're high up on the ballot, but not the tension grabbing type of race. And so it's almost impossible to really affect the general election. But the primary you can affect because you go to, in my case, Republican events. And so you're getting to the people who are active and involved in the Republican community who can spread the word and recommend you and endorse you and get your name out there to others.
So while we're on that topic, I will admit I'm not a Republican, but it seems like the Republican primaries in Texas are about to get a lot more fun than they have been in a long, long time. What are you Republicans up to? What's going on? And why does everybody have a primary opponent now?
Well, it's that I can't comment too much on. I've just focused on my own race, but there's definitely a lot of candidates on the Republican side now.
Well, Kyle, I'll answer this because despite whatever the Democrats want to do, this is a one-party state at the statewide level, and all the decisions get made at the Republican primary level.
Sure.
And when that happens, no one is. I mean, if you want to run, maybe there's an incumbent, maybe there's not. If you want to be an office holder, you got to do it in the Republican Party, and that's just how it. And so when that happens, there's going to be some discord. There's not discord on the Democrat side because you're not going to win at the statewide election unless something dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, not since 1990.
You heard it here, folks. If you're a statewide Democrat running, Pete says you got no chance.
Well, I mean, that's literally.
And if you look at the ballots, he's not wrong. He's just purely on evidence.
So what I think is interesting is, Supreme Court, civil Supreme Court, you can have legitimate arguments on tort reform and D's and R's kind of line up the way they do. The Court of Criminal Appeals should really not be a partisan race.
I was about to say that. That's a great point.
Or if there are partisan issues, I just don't have any idea what they are, right?
Yeah.
Like criminals, send them to jail.
Or
Not so much jail.
apply the law as it's written.
Right. But it's got to be more complicated than that because we're idiots.
Yeah, we're not smart.
No. Of course, you're very smart, but
Educated, not smart. Difference.
well, it is important, I think, on the partisan races, and here's why: is it comes down to judicial philosophy, generally speaking, is that most, of course, not all, but most Republican judges are going to want to be letter of the law, apply it strictly the way it's written, the way the legislature intended, and for a regionalist, I want it to ensure that it's not going to change over time. It means what it means at the time it was enacted, or in a constitutional provision ratified at the time it was ratified, and so I think that it has to always be that way, and I'm very methodical and strict about the way I approach these things. There are a lot of Democrat judges, and again, not all, but there are a lot of Democrat judges, and they run on this where they have a more of a social justice agenda. They feel like there's over incarceration. They feel like there's people who are treated unfairly, and they want to fix it. And so with their discretion as judges, then they're doing things that don't strictly apply the law because they're more focused on the outcome rather than what the law is. They'd rather focus on what they would like the law to be because we're in a Republican state and they don't necessarily agree with the laws that get passed by the Republican majority.
So are you saying it from a constitutional philosophy, or are you talking about state court judges and up?
I'm talking about state court judges.
Okay.
I think you see it at every level. And again, I'm not saying every single Democrat is like that or every single Republican is like that. You have some that don't subscribe to that type of judicial philosophy that I'm mentioning, on either side. But, generally speaking, that's what I think voters anyway expect.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the Democratic ones that you'd say more law and order, they get flack from their left side because they're like, wait, you're a Democrat, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. They're like, no, I just trying to call balls and strikes, and they get it from that side.
Exactly.
Same thing.
How long is the term for the Criminal Court of Appeals?
6 years.
Okay. When are you up next?
March 2024.
Oh,
2 months.
there we go. Oh, I did not know we were on the ballot right now. Okay.
Yes, I am on the ballot.
Do we want to plug? What do we want to plug?
Well, I was going to.
Her campaign website. Yeah.
We don't, we kind of try to keep it down the line here, but I've known Judge Slaughter for a long time.
Better, Peter.
And there is not a more, I was going to say.
Nailed it.
There's not a more hardworking, fair judge. I'd highly recommend her. I hope everyone watching this will, and I guess even if you're a Democratic voter like Kyle, you can't vote for her in the primary, but you, of course, can help her set another record for her statewide vote totals. And
to be fair, I have given money to almost as many Republicans as I have Democrats because the elections go a certain way in Texas, and you're just kind of stuck a lot of the time.
You heard it here first, people. Playing both sides of the aisle.
But if you,
I think it's not a bad thing.
If you were voting in the Republican primary, and this is a race that a lot of people like, I can't name any other judges on your court except you.
Okay.
So I have to go look and do my research before I vote. But if you want to know, if you're voting in the Republican primary, make sure you vote, do the research and vote for the right people, starting with Judge Slaughter.
Got it.
Would be my advice.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So one of the things I've heard about in your election that I don't really understand is this State versus Stevens. I was wondering if you could tell us more about it.
Sure. So in 2021, there was a case originated out of Jefferson County where the sheriff, Zena Stevens, was a Democrat elected sheriff there, but there was some investigations happening about some campaign finance violations of various candidates. And while these investigations were happening, Zena Stevens caught the eye of that investigation, and she was referred.
Who was doing the investigation?
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm trying to remember.
Rangers?
I can't remember if it was the Rangers. I can't remember exactly who was doing the investigation at this point. But anyway, so there was an investigation happening. I can't remember if it was the FBI or the Rangers or who was doing it.
It was a state level case, though.
It was a state level case, yes. And so so the violation in Zena Stevens' situation was she had received a $5,000 cash contribution, which you're not allowed to do, but she reported it. She put it on her campaign finance report under the section of $50 or less cash contribution.
Wait, she reported it as 50?
She reported as $5,000, and she reported it.
Oh.
Yes. So
she was honest about the reporting.
She was honest about the reporting. She just wasn't allowed to take the cash contribution. And so that was, once that caught the attention of whoever was investigating, it got referred over to the DA's office. And the DA's office said, we're not going to prosecute this because it's really more of a campaign finance violation. The Texas Ethics Commission can deal with this, basically. And so the DA said, I'm not going to prosecute. Well, then the Attorney General, relying on an election code provision, I think it was 273 point something, but anyway.
We're not going to look that up.
Yes.
Yeah, we weren't going to finish that sentence.
I was thinking, he's like, I thought it was 273.9, but you're the law.
But anyway, so there's an election code provision that purported to allow the Attorney General to criminally prosecute election law violations. So this fell within that, being an election law violation. So the Attorney General's office said, we'll prosecute it. If the DA is not going to, we'll prosecute it. So they took the case, the AG's office took the case, took it next door to Chambers County and paneled a grand jury and got indictments against Zena Stevens. Well, in a pre-trial writ of habeas corpus, she said, hey, the Attorney General under the Texas Constitution does not have the authority to prosecute criminal cases and can't prosecute me. And so then that got taken up, and it eventually came to us. And when it came to us, we said, you're right, because the Texas Constitution has an express separation of powers provision. The Attorney General is in the executive department under the Texas Constitution. The district attorneys are under the judicial department of the Texas Constitution, and they both have express constitutional duties. None of the Attorney General's duties include civil law, and they never have. They've all included civil law, and they include any kind of criminal law in the history of Texas since the AG's position was by executive ordinance in 1836.
I was about to guess that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
So you just knew it.
I knew it.
Yeah.
And so even from that time forward, the Attorney General had pretty much only civil law duties. Now, there was a little bit of criminal law and on more the appellate side, but not in the trial courts. But our current 1876 Texas Constitution assigned him all civil law duties and no criminal law duties. And then it says that he's to represent the state in the Texas Supreme Court, but not the Court of Criminal Appeals. And then the district attorneys in the judicial department are assigned the express duty that they shall represent the state of Texas in all cases in the district and inferior courts, so all the trial courts. So the DAs have the duty to represent the state in the trial courts. The AG does not have that duty under the Constitution, but there are some enumerated provisions that are civil law provisions that allow him to represent the state for those specific issues, but not for criminal law cases. And from 1836, when, we were the Republic of Texas and DAs were listed in the Constitution back in 1836 on forward, it has always been the duty of the district attorneys to prosecute all criminal cases. And for more than 160 years, the Texas Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals opinions have all said that it is the district attorney's express and exclusive duty to prosecute criminal cases. It is not the duty of the Attorney General. And even Attorney General opinions going back to Mark White's administration have all said that it is the district attorneys that have the duty to prosecute criminal cases, not the AG.
Even authority and discretion.
Yes, exactly.
So the result of State v. Stevens was a dismissal?
So,
Or I don't. Did they bring charges? Yeah, I was gonna say they brought them, but they didn't have the authority to bring them.
Right, because the Attorney General didn't have the authority to prosecute her. So it got dismissed.
And so now that's a big deal in your life.
It's a big deal in my election. The Attorney General was very upset by the position, even though it's a complete constitutional conservative originalist position that the court has taken. It was an 8-1 decision. He was upset by it, and other people were upset by it because they felt like we were trying to strip the Attorney General of authority to prosecute fraud, like election law fraud, and that's certain.
He has an election fraud hotline.
So yes, so
Nobody ever calls it, but it's there.
I call it. Speak for yourself.
it's a serious concern. It's definitely a serious concern in the state. It's a concern for. I'm elected. It's certainly a serious concern for me and for everyone else. But the fact of the matter is, as judges, it is not our place to judicially amend the Texas Constitution. It has to be done by a constitutional amendment. And we're following the law. We are being, strictly following the law as it was intended to be interpreted, by the 1876 ratifying voters. And I wrote a 73-page opinion on rehearing, going through Texas history, going back from we were part of Mexico.
Okay, what's the opinion? Because I'd like to read it. What's the?
Sure.
Yeah,
No,
because
we love Texas history.
Wait. My thought with you were saying this is everyone knows. I mean, anyone who grew up in Texas, we know the U.S. Constitution, or we're lawyers and all that, but no one really. We don't study the Texas Constitution, which is a very, it's long and convoluted, and right because you can amend the Texas Constitution a lot easier. You can amend the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
And so it's convoluted. So you went through the whole, pulled this part and that part and weaved it all together.
I went back to when, to explain why our Constitution was set up the way it was. So I went back to when Texas was...
Because it was forced upon us by those Yankee carpetbaggers after 1865.
They were volunteers.
Yeah, so the 1869 Constitution was, it was a union, it was a union-led effort to impose a more centralized bureaucratic government on Texas.
We know Kyle's face looks a certain way, but he's actually pretty smart.
You may also know this. The military government of Texas was in the Tremont Hotel in Galveston.
Ah, interesting. Yes, so there was military rule throughout Texas after the Civil War, and yes, that was...
Is it often you find yourself, because that opinion supports small government.
Exactly.
But very unpopular with the Republican Party, who for the most part stands for the smallest government.
It is, and it's an interesting thing. And when I've been able to go out and I've done a PowerPoint presentation to a number of groups, of very conservative Republican groups, and after I walk them through this, they say, "Oh, I understand it," and they're shocked that they didn't know more about this. They're shocked that that our court was vilified, and we were completely vilified for about this, because people, and I understand, people care very, very deeply about making sure our elections are secure, that our votes are counted properly, and that there's not fraud. I understand that. I want that too. And so when they believe that there are DAs that will not prosecute these voter fraud cases, they're hoping the Attorney General will come in and prosecute them so we can have secure elections. I get that. I understand that need. But what you're saying is true, is that the way that our 1876 Constitution was set up was because we were trying to have more locally powerful people so they could be held more accountable, where the centralized government was very limited and did not have that kind of authority or power. So all statewide elected officials, other than judges, were placed in the executive department with the separation of powers provision so that the centralized government could not have as big of an impact on the locally elected officials.
Communities policed ourselves.
Exactly. So that's, and we're not trying to do anything to the Attorney General or take anything away from him. We're trying to protect our Texas Constitution the way it's written and the way it was originally intended, based upon our Texas history, where we fought so hard against the Mexican government and then fought so hard against the federal government to have a more limited government in Texas, where there's more local authority and power and more accountability for the locally elected officials.
So we've talked about this big issue that is probably going to come up in your campaign. Mm-hmm. You want to talk to us about your opponent and what your plans are, and give us your campaign pitch?
How many do you have? Just one?
I just have one opponent. Sure. There's three of us who are up on the court. Our presiding judge, Sharon Keller, who was elected in 1994 and has been the presiding judge since 2000. Judge Barbara Hurley, who was elected in 2000 and has been on the court and runs the grant of the court and does a tremendous job at that. I mean, that's a huge job that she's undertaken. Doesn't get paid anything for it to do with this extra work. But anyway, so the three of us are up, and because of the Stevens opinion, where we're trying to ensure that we are following the letter of the law of the Texas Constitution as originally intended, but because of that, there's people who are upset, and so we all three have opponents. And in particular, my opponent is a attorney out of Collin County.
Everything good comes out of Collin County these days.
Nothing. He's an attorney out of Collin County.
Shirley has a ton of criminal background, right?
I don't think his name is Shirley.
Yeah.
From what I can see, his criminal law and appellate law background is very limited. He's never been a judge, and I believe is my understanding, he was recruited and encouraged to run, but he didn't. We had to get petition signatures all over the state. He didn't circulate a single one of his own petitions, and so that begs the question, why are you running? You're not willing to put forth the effort to even collect your own petition signatures, not even one.
Sounds a little Soros-y. I'm just kidding. I'm not starting any, in my opinion, as a joke and parody.
His last name Rambo or Bush or Yarbrough. Yarbrough, would run all the time, and this guy would win because everyone liked Ralph Yarbrough, which is funny because Ralph Yarbrough was super liberal senator, but everyone liked the name, and it would be, no matter if it was Republican or Democrat, he'd do well. Does he have a good name, your opponent?
His name is Lee, so I don't know.
Last guy.
I don't like it.
Well, let me say that what's ironic is, so when Judge Slaughter and I first met, I was working with the person that was the lead counsel for the Attorney General in his impeachment, and I know is a huge fan of Judge Slaughter. So it's surprising that anyone would have a problem if you.
I can't imagine. You might be, for the first time in the state of Texas, you're being penalized right now. At least the campaign against you is trying to penalize you for being too conservative.
Yeah.
Well, the way it is being.
She's a liberal like me.
Yeah, that's just the thing. She's in other ships. We're down to an authority. She refuses to advocate from the bench, and that is bad. They're like, wait. That's we've been saying something different for a while. Well, I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here. Yes, but yeah, it's interesting because you refuse to have judicial activism for something that just wasn't there. It's like, it's not your problem. Fix the Constitution. They're called amendments for a reason.
Right. And so it is frustrating, but the problem is that it's been spun differently. It's been spun that we've stripped the Attorney General of his right to prosecute election law fraud. That's kind of the spin that's been put on it. But
It was never there.
the thing is that, but people don't take the time to look at the opinion or look at more information about it. And they are just accepting this spin that's been put on it. But when in fact, we are doing the job that we promised we would do. We are being constitutional conservatives and originalists. At least, I know I am. But it was an 8-1 decision by the court. And I will, and my thing is, I will never, ever, ever be an activist judge. I don't care how much political pressure there is. I don't know how much public clamor there is over something. I have to look at myself in the mirror, and, as a Christian, I know that I judge for God. I don't judge for man. And so I will, I can't be bought. I'm not going to be, persuaded to change my judicial philosophy for anything. And so I hope and pray that the voters recognize that and will reelect me. But if they don't, at least, I'm happy with the job I've done. I feel good about the job I've done. And honestly, if I lost my election, I could go out and make 3 times the money that I'm making now, because we can't seem to get raises from the legislature anyway. So
Fair.
You're a public servant, and that's what you've chosen to do, and that's why we appreciate you.
How dare you keep your oath?
Yeah, all right.
And for what it's worth, I know that this organization that recruited your opponent, he was like 6th, 7th, or 8th down on the list, because a couple of my former clients they tried to recruit them, and they immediately called me to ask me what they thought they should do.
And Kyle was number 4 on this list.
Yeah.
Just be glad they didn't get to 9.
Yeah, another interesting thing about my opponent, which shocked me, is that there was a news story done on it, even that he has about a $500,000 judgment against him in Collin County for failure to pay his mortgage for several years, and an order for sale of his home, and apparently has invaded.
Maybe he just wants to move to Austin. He's letting that property go.
And who knows? But to me that's surprising, because if you're going to claim that you have integrity and that you're a conservative, but you can't manage your own finances and hold yourself accountable for your own actions and your own mismanagement of finances, then why are you claiming that you have integrity and you're a conservative?
It could be strategic, because he sounds like he's got a lot of experience on the civil side. Maybe he just knows the ins and outs of that area. Maybe just not criminal law.
Maybe a bankruptcy bench would be better.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
This is fun. It's like kind of passively aggressively going after the same party, but for standing up for the rights of what that party stands for. It's very confusing.
We talked about this before. In Houston, it's all, the judiciary is all Democrat, and there's definitely a lot of infighting going on that server on the Democratic side. Right. And so it's like you almost want there to be some kind of retention elections where you get good judges like you, and they're like, you just vote on that, and then on retention, which other states have, or in Harris County.
Yeah, I don't know that we're in that.
It's never going to happen, but it would be.
We talked about this in our prior segment, in a roundabout way, but I don't know that it's a net positive that we get to, that we have to have parties associated with benches. And I don't know if it's a great thing.
It's the law. It should just be it should be
it's something
what it says and what it doesn't.
It should be that everyone follows the law as it's written and as originally intended. I mean, that should be how it is.
I meant to ask, I don't know if he said it, but the Jefferson County, I don't know the political dynamic there. Was the district attorney Republican, Democrat? It was a Democrat? Okay, I wasn't sure. I know they have some Democrat judges that I've been in front of, but I don't know all.
All Democrats.
So from that opinion, as it sits now, if a district attorney says, nah, I'm not feeling it, that's battle over.
Right, battle over. You know, and that was part of my dissenting opinion on rehearing, though, because it was I thought we should rehear it. No one had raised. There was one issue that no one had raised, and it was the issue of. Now we're getting really nerdy, but it was the issue of whether or not the statute was facially unconstitutional versus unconstitutional as applied. And I thought that there was an issue about that we should rehear and determine whether or not it was facially unconstitutional or just unconstitutional as applied. But that was the only nuance. Otherwise, I agree wholeheartedly with what we did, with what was presented.
How many opinions does the Criminal Court of Appeals churn out a year, roughly?
I believe last year we did about 345 opinions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We handle about 3 times the volume as the Texas Supreme Court. We're one of the busiest appellate courts in the nation.
How many staff attorneys do you get? You'd have an army of them.
So every judge has a senior attorney, a permanent attorney, a law clerk who's there for a year, and then an assistant, an executive assistant. We have a central staff of attorneys that are divided into writs, petitions for discretionary review, and death penalty, because we're direct appeal on death penalty cases. And we have about, I think, around 16 attorneys in the central staff right now. Yeah.
That's a lot of opinions.
Do you guys have a Supreme Court versus Criminal Court of Appeals softball game every year?
No, that would be fun, though.
I know, right? That would be fun.
I would love to commentate it.
I wish there was more action between the two courts.
And I've met most of the Supreme Court justices. You guys are way cooler.
I mean, it'd be fun, like a pickleball tournament.
I think Jeff Boyd can go deep.
Well, this is the thing about Nathan. He's strong. That's the thing about Nathan Heck. Like, his crossover game is weak, but he's murdering the low post.
Yeah, he's got bat speed.
He will box out.
Well, I tell you, there have been some judges from the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals and the Texas Supreme Court who have done, some gun programs together, like where we, go and learn how to be more expert shooters and things with our rifles or our handguns.
Do you run into each other often? The Texas Supreme Court and the Criminal Court. Do y'all rub shoulders and become friends, I guess?
So, yes, we're all very friendly. We still have a lot of interaction. I mean, I'm very good friends with Justice Devine, so he and I have a lot of interaction. I love his family, and I went to his daughter's wedding and years ago, and I've met everyone in his family, and I just love them. But otherwise, it's like pretty much just kind of see in passing at events or in the elevator, because we are in the same building. We're in the Supreme Court building on the Capitol grounds.
I know. Are y'all in the same courtroom when y'all hear argument? Different ones?
No, we have. When you walk into the Supreme Court building, on the right is the Court of Criminal Appeals, on the left is Texas Supreme Court, and then we are on the second floor. We occupy the second floor, and then the Texas Supreme Court's on the third floor.
Do they look about the same?
The offices? No.
Changing the judge to justices, Amendment 1. We got to redo some of these courtrooms and offices.
Is there a Supreme Court gym?
Oh, he's trying to get an espresso machine. Well, we don't. We're lucky we get, we're buy our own Keurigs and things. So.
Amendment 3, getting the espresso machine.
Bruce this up. After why you want this job?
More K-Cups.
He had this espresso machine.
Okay, there's been a lot of law discussed.
It has.
I would like to know about this Hope Floats story.
Oh, yeah.
Heard.
The movie?
Hope Floats, as y'all know, was filmed in Smithville, Texas, starring Harry Connick Jr. I sat next to Harry Connick Jr.'s cousin at Mr. B's just randomly.
Are you really?
Yeah.
He has hands down my favorite Christmas album.
Yeah. How the guy was like,
Harry Connick Jr.'s cousin?
No, Harry Connick Jr.
Harry Connick Jr.'s cousin seemed like even cooler than Harry Connick.
That's not.
Yes, I mean,
Harry Connick was cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Anyhow, so Harry Connick Jr., Sandra Bullock, Smithville. What was your involvement in that?
So I was Sandra Bullock's photo double for that movie.
And how did that come about?
So it was interesting. I had done, theater and acting in high school and in college, and I had an agent because I thought, okay, well, I can make a little bit of money doing commercial work. I had no aspirations to become an actress, but I enjoyed it, and so I figured, well, I can. Go do I did some commercials and some music videos, whatever, when I was in high school, got paid for it. And, and it helps when, your dad's, a single parent raising you, and, you're kind of it's expensive to raise a girl. So something I can help out. So I did some acting. I had an agent and continued on with that when I was in undergrad at University of Houston. And I happened to be dropping off some headshots and resumes to my agent, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here because we're about to submit your headshot and resume to be Sandra Bullock's stand-in and photo double because she's filming a movie right outside of Austin." And I was thinking, okay, yeah, sure, like this is going to happen. I was like, okay, great. I thought nothing of it. Well, it was within a day or two, I got a phone call to go to Austin for an audition for this. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I drove to Austin, and Sandra Bullock was there along with the director of photography and the director, and they stood us next to each other. She was on the phone the whole time. She was very busy, but she was very nice. But anyway, so she kept looking at me. You know, it was kind of funny. She kept looking at me like, what? Yeah, this is weird. And so they stood us next to each other, and they had us, and they were looking at all different angles. They had us sit down, and they were looking at us at all different angles. And they decided I was too short to be her stand-in because she's taller than I am. The director of photography was very particular about the lighting, and it had to have the right height for the lighting. So they're like, we're not hiring you to be her stand-in, but you look so much like her. We want you to be her photo double. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I got the gig, and I would drive out to Smithville. And
Where is Smithville?
it's
Between Houston and Austin.
45 minutes east of Austin.
10 or 29 on 71. Okay.
71. It's a lovely town. Anyway,
It has a giant billboard that says Smithville, home of hope floats.
I've never slowed down enough to see.
Car service.
It's also where a movie called Tree of Life, which is very good, Terrence Malick movie, it was filmed there.
interesting. But yeah, it was neat because I would have to like drive a vehicle through the hill country, and there'd be a camera car like shooting right across the windshield, so you couldn't quite see inside, but it was me driving and not her. And then I had Mae Whitman playing the daughter, and she was little at the time, and so I had Mae Whitman's little photo double next to me, and so here I am like driving through the hill country, and they're doing all that, and then I remember we would stop at places and in small towns and for a bite to eat or something. And then people, knew that Sandra Bullock was filming a movie in the area, and they would see me.
Did you sign autographs?
Oh, I would have.
Yeah.
I avoided because I was like, I don't want to.
Because I would have been like $10, kid.
I would have. Yeah.
I want to make him feel that. I wanted we saw Sandra Bullock, and be able to tell others we saw Sandra Bullock. So I kind of hid. So I didn't want to like crush their dreams. I'm like, no, sorry, I'm just, and nobody being paid $100 a day to be here.
I would have gotten out of the car and said, no photos, only signatures, and just let it run.
You played the mom because the mom was a fan. Yeah, I did.
But talking about Harry Connick Jr. Here I am, I'm really just like a nobody on the set. $100 a day, I'm a little piddly photo double, a nobody. And Harry Connick Jr. Came up to me and said, I haven't met you yet. I'm Harry. And he reached out his hand and shook my hand. I was just floored.
So I would be melting.
I was like, oh my God. And then there was one time it was so neat where the film takes place, or the mom's house is kind of, she was a taxidermist, or it had a bunch of taxidermy type of things around, but there was a piano in there. And so Harry Connick Jr. sat down and started playing at one point. And then Sandra Bullock came over and started singing. And so it was like...
And did you start dancing?
No, I was just... This is so surreal. This is crazy.
That's pretty amazing.
And it was at that moment you knew, I'm going to be on the Criminal Court of Appeals one day.
Well, Harry Connick Jr.'s dad was the New Orleans DA.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a real criminal justice sort of movie.
I have another funny thing. So, I actually started off as a political science psychology double major in college because I thought that's what you kind of had to do to go to law school. I knew I wanted to go to law school. Uh-huh. And so, but when I got into, I hated political science. And so then I wanted to take a year off to figure out what am I going to do, because I don't want to major in political science, and can I still go to law school? And then that's when I found out, talking to a friend's uncle who was a professor of radio at Boston College. He said, you can have any degree and go to law school.
Yep.
And I was just floored. I was like, I had no idea. And so he started talking about what I liked and what I had done. And he said, well, you can have a radio, television, film degree if you liked doing that work. And I said, really? And so I was shocked. He said, well, University of Houston has a really great radio television program. It's very underrated, but very affordable, especially since you'd be in state. And I said, well, that's amazing. So I wound up going to University of Houston for undergrad, getting a radio television degree. And I knew I wanted to work first before I went on to law school. I had to make some money anyway to pay for law school. So I went out to LA and worked in the film and TV industry out there. And I got into a program called the Assistant Directors program, and it was through the Directors Guild of America, and it was a 2-year program where they would train you. They only took about 20 people a year. It was very competitive to get in, but they would train you and pay you while they were training you to be an assistant director. Well, when I went out there and did this, I didn't know exactly. I know I wanted, max to 5 years. So I didn't tell anyone I wanted to go to law school because I was like, well, I want to go through this whole experience, and I don't, they would never take me if they knew I might be leaving. So anyway, I was doing this. I didn't tell anyone I wanted to go to law school, but the shows that they assigned me to work on were JAG, The Practice, and Judging Amy.
There's something.
All legally.
I love The Practice. We used to watch that.
Yes, and the actors on there are super nice people too, by the way. But it was incredible, and I was like, does someone know? Does someone secretly knows that I want to go to law school?
Or then you start getting like, I knew I had the look,
Well, here's the U of H bit. He's the Motion Picture Association of America head guy was Jack Valenti, which is one of our U of H proud graduates.
South Texas College of Law turned out a co-executive producer of a award-winning short series on YouTube. So we got that.
Turned down, or you were the graduate?
No, I am the guy. Yeah, that's me. That's my short series we talked about a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, I was like, I thought you got in there. I thought.
I know. Yeah, we were in and won an award.
Okay, so Judge, what did you say? Judge Amy?
We have
Judging Amy.
Judging Amy.
Highest office holder on the show today.
And
most famous. Yeah,
now you're
most famous. Yeah, so.
And what's Sandra Bullock doing now? I mean, she's kind of,
She married.
I know what she's not doing.
Motor, right?
Yeah, Jesse, and more. Yeah.
Yeah, they had like a really ugly divorce.
She's probably being a judicial activist somewhere.
serious legal podcast. Okay, we don't get into gossip. Well, all we know is that we've got
Kyle,
the most successful person out of the Hope Floats movie experience.
Can I do a little theater exercise, maybe casting exercise? Who would be Peter's picture double, and who? I mean, clearly.
Burt Reynolds.
So Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh,
Some people would say Eric Bana, but
thank you.
But a different
like that. Yeah, Munich Eric Bana would be best.
and I'm thinking maybe a Gilbert Gottfried. Who do you have for?
Come on, Gilbert Gottfried.
Ask Amanda. Don't put Michelle on the spot.
Robert Redford?
Oh,
Does Stone Phillips act?
Stone Phillips. Yeah.
Not very well.
Wow.
We were watching the game last night. I like that J.J. McCarthy quarterback. My wife was like, I don't think he's that cool, but I was like, that's a cool kid. Yeah. Congratulations to him, national champion.
There you go.
Asterisk, maybe some people say.
Well, we'll see.
There's some sign stealing. Hey, welcome to the University of Michigan. Welcome to the Astros family.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a strict constitutionalist, I think Harbaugh has coached his last NCAA league.
We all got caught.
But who would Kyle's be with the hair?
Oh, that's easy. That's so easy. Sean Astin.
Oh, this is in Jonah.
Yeah, I'm the Hobbit, 100%. That's so easy.
Is that the same one that did Rudy?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great.
I've been to a couple Notre Dame games, and I have a cousin who has season tickets there, and I wear it like the
And then you get
the letter jacket. And people are like, will you sign this? And I'm like, $10, kid.
Yeah. No photos.
The bullet. I'm also Rudy. I'll sign that for you. But sign your head.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is McCarthy's got the same kind of hair you.
Oh, does he have a coif?
Yeah.
Bouffant?
Yeah.
Yeah. My hair's
Put some strong. Put some on your face. Something.
a little bit of eyelash thing.
And meditate.
He's incredibly athletic. In fact, extremely athletic. I'm not sure that I fit that belt.
I am sure you do not fit that bill.
He saw me in New Orleans. I cannot do a 40.
No, I've just seen you in crutches more as an adult than any other adult I've ever seen, Kyle.
That is 100% fair. By the way, I broke my leg in a pretty serious ski accident, but thank you for bringing up such a painful topic.
Hey, but we built you back up, and look at you now, walking, dancing.
But the upside is I have an incredible cane collection. I have like 4 canes.
He does.
One got ivory. One I think is like an elephant tusk. It's really nice.
Did you watch Golden Globes the other night?
Yeah.
The guy Alan Ruck, I think is his name, from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
Who I think of still the same way. He had a cane. I mean, he looked great. He looked really cool, but he had a cane on it. Made me remind me of I did it well.
His disability reminded us of Kyle.
Yeah, I use it for Dickens on the Strand in Galveston to shoo away the sea.
All right. So, would you guys like to add anything? We've had our distinguished guests long enough.
I don't want to jinx it. I feel like this might have been our best episode ever. I kind of want to just and seen.
Before we say something that makes us sound less smart, because we sound pretty smart. We dug deep into the Constitution.
I mean, we talked about some legal stuff that, like, deep into the repertoire that I didn't know we had.
We got range.
Yeah, there's two things I would say. One, I appreciate that we have had an excellent jurist and a legal scholar here to talk about criminal law that, you know, maybe not everyone knows. Two, I think it's been good to talk about the fact that judges, in my opinion, it's not a partisan thing. It's who's a good judge, and do your research on judges because it affects your life.
Yeah.
Don't just stop at governor or senator, because that's what most people stop at. Do your research. And three, vote Michelle Slaughter if you're voting in the Republican.
Yeah. Do you have a website or?
Yes, it's judgemichelleslaughter.com.
Okay.
And to all the municipal judges that said they didn't want to be in our podcast,
And if you're sending cash,
and now.
if you're sending cash less than $50, don't add a couple zeros on it today.
Let's check. If you get a $5,000 cash,
Yeah, that is. You were living pretty loose already.
But I mean, maybe if you've ever been to Jefferson County, like, things are a little bit different.
well, we're in Harris County.
Bring us up, Pete.
Thank you very much. We will see you next week. Follow us, Spotify, Instagram,
Apple, YouTube,
Chaos Theory, Amanda Orr Strategies,
And
Fair and Ball,
Tic-Tac.
Herbert Law Firm.
And huge thanks to our guests.
Yes.
Great job. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks
So-
so much.
we're doing the HBO documentary. We're on.
Yeah.
The HBO
Done.
documentary.